Aloha mai kako, and welcome to Inspired by Aloha, a podcast dedicated to making your day a little brighter by showcasing that inspirational people and acts of aloha surround us every day. My name is Shareen.
And I'm Erin.
And I'm Amy.
And we're so grateful that you've chosen to spend a few minutes with us as we get ready to be
Inspired by Aloha. Aloha. Today we are pleased to welcome our guest and new friend, Phyllis Look. She is the first forest therapy guide in Hawaii, trained and certified by the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs, or ANFT. It's the leading global voice for forest therapy. Phyllis recently shared the practice of Shinrin Yoku, also known as forest bathing, with our Inspired by Aloha Ohana. She took us to the Lion Arboretum located in the lush valley of Mānoa, and there she guided us through what one might call a nature walk, but it was unlike any other experience we have had. In our forest bathing journey, Phyllis incorporated a series of invitations to help us pause and really connect with nature using all of our senses. We are so excited to have her join us today to spotlight her kind and giving nature and to learn more about the revered Japanese tradition of Shinrin Yoku. Welcome, Phyllis. Hey, Phyllis. Thank you for being here. We're so happy that you're here. You know, the three of us had the luxury and the privilege of being able to share in the forest bathing practice with you recently. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it was definitely life-changing, and we can't wait to share our experiences with our listeners. So, but before we do, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you come from and a little bit about your background.
Yes, I'd love to. You know, you talked about the lush valley of Mānoa, and actually my family has lived in this valley for more than 60 years. So I was born and raised here in Honolulu, so spent most of my growing up years in this valley. I actually love to say also that I did all of my education in this valley. So from the time I was in elementary school through university, I have been in the embrace of these two arms of mountains. And I feel like I continue to learn from them even now. They're still my school. My degree is in drama and theater. And that was my early career, actually, as an actor and stage director. I also got my master's at the Yale School of Drama, so I have a directing MFA. My first part of my career, I would say the first, 20-something years of my life, was spent in the professional theater, both here, but primarily on the mainland. The second half of my life was when I moved back to Hawaii. And knowing that there wasn't going to be a lot of professional theater work here, I fell into a kind of auxiliary kind of career, which was in broadcast production. And then from that moved into, because I was working at a marketing agency, moved into marketing communications. So there, you know, I was able to work for, you know, all sorts of wonderful clients, from Hawaiian Host to Homeworld to Avis to Tesoro Gas. So sort of big and local clients. And also got to work at the University of Hawaii, Mānoa, and then also finished my day job career at the Hawaii Public Radio as their marketing director. So that was kind of that part of my, you know, real world sort of career. So I really look at what I do now as my third act. It's that post-retirement gig, right? But it is the one that I can say from the bottom of my heart that it gives me the greatest joy. And I feel like it is the culmination of all of the things that I've done before. And it is, I think, the best expression of who I am. So I really feel like, oh, I finally found what my purpose is in life now at 60-something years old. So everyone, you have hope.
Wow.
So I hope that gives you a little bit of a sense of where I come from and what I did before I became a forest therapy guide.
What an amazing journey.
Yes, but I also like to think that there's a through line. You know, I think the through line is what I believe is really maybe my mission in life, which is to bring people together. or bring disparate elements together, because now it's not just people, right? It's people in the natural world. So I feel like whether that was in theater, I was, telling a story across the footlights, whether it was in marketing communications, you got a message or some kind of policy or whatever that you're trying to communicate. But always my role was kind of that bridge, and putting together things that didn't seem like they maybe knew of each other, certainly, and didn't really acknowledge that they had a connection. So this idea of threading that is also, I feel like, the thread that's kind of woven itself through my life. And maybe even in my personal life, I tend to be the person that will say, okay, guys, we got to get together for birthday. We got to get together for so-and-so's, whatever. But yeah, so I tend to be that connector kind of a personality.
That's so cool, because that's how we are too.
Yes.
So now you are connected. Now you're connected to us, Phyllis.
Yes, we are.
So
For the rest of your life, whether you like it or not. No.
Yeah, I'm already liking it.
That's so awesome.
That's so sweet.
So we experienced this experience with you, and maybe we can start with you telling us about what is Shinrin Yoku. Did I say that right? Shinrin Yoku.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about I practiced, saying that Shinrin Yoku.
It's not easy.
And tell us about what is it? Where did it originate from? And what are some of the benefits of that?
Well, I love that you said that you experienced the experience, because the thing that I find, even though I've said this many times before, the definition of Shinrin Yoku, it is still something that you have to experience. So let's begin with that acknowledgement, that no matter how well I try and frame it with words, that will never actually capture the experience, the essence of what it is that's happening. So the short answer is that it is an evidence-based well-being practice for people and the planet, that involves taking your time and immersing yourself in a natural environment and tuning into your senses. At base, that's all it is. It's that simple and that profound. But it is about a different relationship to time, so that you actually are going slow enough where you can actually notice what's happening to you and what it is that your senses are picking up. We like to say that there are a lot of senses that we don't often acknowledge, right, in our lives. We know, for example, that there is that sense of, where you are in space, right? Your sense of, the favorite one I love to share with people is something I read about. I'll never actually be able to actually prove this, but what they tell us is that even before a person exits their mother's womb, there's already, and actually the first sense that comes online is the sense of where we are, where our human body is in relationship to the earth. So when you're floating around there in utero, you actually know where mother is and where Mother Earth is. When you come out, that sense is always still with you. So there are a lot of things that we're sensing that in our busy lives we don't often allow ourselves to do. So Shinrin Yoku, in that simple form, has been found to be a wonderful stress reducer. And it was designed, or actually, let me put it this way, it was named in the early 80s in Japan by their sort of Department of Forestry and Agriculture. And this was in response to a health epidemic of stress-related diseases that was showing up in their public health data. Now, the people of Japan had, for years before then, had this long relationship with nature and the forest, right? So in their indigenous religions of Shinto or Buddhism, there is the knowledge that in that tree lives a kami that I need to revere. In that waterfall lives a spirit that we still have to pay homage to. And every holiday or whatever, we go to those places and show our reverence and still bring it into our lives. So they knew already that just going out into the forest made them feel better. Right? Just that kind of intuitive thing that we all know, right? Whether it's stepping out in midday to grab a lunch or going to the beach on the weekend or just puttering around in our garden. We just know that afterwards we're somehow our mood has lifted a little bit, or all of that maybe rumination kind of stuff has begun to just sort of settle a little bit. So the government was looking for some way to provide the population of these now highly stressed out, urbanized people. And Japan, right. And what had happened in the course of this time, I mean, the reason that this started up in the early 80s was that it was in that 40-year span after World War II that the country so radically transformed in its culture and sort of the society, right? From one that was very agricultural, land-based, to one that is these, Tokyo is the most densely populated city in the world. We know the technology that Japan is and was pumping out, right? And the culture of, long work days and, an expectation, in fact, that you give yourself so entirely to your job was taking its toll on people's health. Like I said, there was these stress-related diseases, right? Everything from strokes, cancers, autoimmune diseases, even suicides were up. Even, I think I was sharing with you on the forest bathing walk, this other term that they came up with, karoshi. You remember what that meant, right? Death by overwork, because people were, after having worked 80 or 100 hours a week for a span of time, were being found literally dead at their desk. So the government said, okay, we need to provide some relief for this that people can do for themselves. So it's a self-care practice at heart. And what did they have available to them? That knowledge of the forest, that knowledge that you felt good in the forest, and the fact that the forest covers 70% of the land mass of Japan. It's right out there. Just take a train ride out of Tokyo for a couple hours, and you'll be in beautiful, densely populated forests and mountains. So there's a strong wood culture in Japan, right? So they set up these what are called bases, forest therapy bases around the country. There's about 65 of them, where the government has kind of sponsored and invested in promoting the idea of going out on these really slow walks and promoting the interaction that you're going to have in these forests. So, as you know, I just came back from this little pilgrimage to Japan, where I got to go to the birthplace of forest bathing, the Akasawa Forest in Nagano Prefecture, and another forest bathing base that's right outside of Tokyo called Okutama. And what you see there, and I wish that more parks and places would take this up here in America, but they will do everything to slow you down and to allow you that kind of reflection space in the forest. So you'll be on a beautifully managed, maintained trail. Like there's like cedar chips underfoot, so it's really soft. But then you get to like a platform that you can have a yoga class surrounded by these sugi and hinoki trees, the cypress and the cedar, which is giving off these beautiful smells that Shareen will know because they are the at the base of the new essential oil that doTERRA has put out called Shinrin Yoku, forest bathing blend. And or you'll walk along the trail and there'll be like this little jutting out. So the trail's going here, and then there'll be like little kind of almost like a diving platform, as if you could picture like a high dive, right? So you'll sort of go out and you'll be like, whoa, kind of above the mountain above, but you'll be now surrounded on three sides by the trees. So you've now stepped away from the trail, and now you're like in, right, with the trees.
That sounds
or
beautiful.
there's another place where, okay, so you're getting a little chilly, you've been on the trail for a bit, you stop, and what should be there in front of you but this beautiful modern wood designed cabin that's lit by a fire where they've got some tea ready for you, floor to ceiling windows that you can sort of look out and enjoy your tea and still enjoy the forest, but now get a little get some warmth back in you, and then proceed along. One of the most striking things was that they had a lift for people in wheelchairs. So because the trail is quite high up on the mountain, they wanted to make it accessible to people in wheelchairs. So people would maybe park down below, strap their wheelchair into this lift, and the wheelchair just sort of, it looks like a roller coaster ride, kind of. It's like these tracks.
But a peaceful one.
Yeah.
Very peaceful, very safe.
Yes.
So up you go in your wheelchair, up this track, and then you land, and you're now on this mountain trail.
Nice.
And then I think one of my favorite things were these benches that they would have alongside of the trail. But the benches were set up so that they're kind of like Adirondack chairs, but it's like a long, long bench. But the back is tilted like that. Okay, so let me see if I can get it on camera. So that when you sit in it, you're forced to kind of lean back. And what do you see? But again, the tops of the trees, and the sky and the clouds. So it just kind of helps you fall right into the appreciation of what is around you. Just like taking in those smells, taking in those sights and sounds. And that's how they do it there.
Wow. What is the name of the trail again, Phyllis? What was the name of the trail?
So that one that I was just describing was Okutama. Okutama, the Okutama base, and there are many, many trails on it. But that was I think one of the premier ones that we got to go on. Yeah, the birthplace is Akasawa, the Akasawa Natural Forest. And that too, beautiful bridges and again little places to rest. That's where also they'll. They had medical professionals actually take your blood pressure. They also used to take heart rate, swab the inside of your cheek for the hormone cortisol in your saliva, which is the stress indicator, just like adrenaline. And then they'll take those same measurements after you come off the forest bathing walk. So,
that's nice.
After 2 or 3 hours, you can actually measure whether your heart rate has come down, your blood pressure's come down, your cortisol levels have come down. And in fact, what did they find? All of those things were reduced. So again, government sponsored, right? So they're looking to actually build the data behind this so that we really know that, okay, what we are proposing as a health intervention, a therapy, is in fact going to be good for you.
Right.
So they are actually trying to, as one writer said, medicalize the forest, right? And the other sort of medicine that we're taking in, of course, are these phytoncides that are coming in on the air. And I think I shared some of that with you. Again, that's all the sort of essential oils. It's kind of organic compounds that the trees give off as their language to the rest of the forest when they're sensing a foreign and threatening attack coming into the forest, like a virus or insects. So it's a way for the trees to kind of like strengthen themselves in preparation to deal with this foreign invasion. And what they found is that when we breathe in these essential oils. And it's the same essential oils, basically, that we love so much in Christmas trees, that piney smell that we get. That's one of these phytoncides. So when we breathe that in, our human body has evolved to the point where we respond to these phytoncides by boosting our immunity. Basically, a white blood cell in our body called the natural killer cell, or NK cell for short, whose role is to roam around our body and attack things like cancerous tumors or cells that are infected with virus. When we breathe in these phytoncides, these NK cells get really happy. So they make more of themselves, and they're roaming around like crazy and doing lots of good things and nipping at the buds of all these infected cells in our body. So basically, it's helping us boost our immunity simply by breathing in the scents of the forest. And those forests that I just mentioned in Japan are known to be where these phytoncides are at the highest, some of the highest levels, because of these cedar and cypress trees that are there.
I'm going to breathe in more of my Shinrin Yoku essential oil.
Get into the spirit.
That's so awesome.
And very, very calming, right?
It is.
So all of these kinds of physiological benefits come with just slowing down and really just moving through the forest. And, we say that it's forest bathing, but in fact, it's a kind of ecotherapy or nature therapy. And there are similar kinds of effects that happen on the seashore, breathing in the negative ions that come off of waves and things like that. So I'm not as expert on ocean kind of benefits, but a lot of my other colleague guides around the world actually guide at oceans, on ocean sides. So they're finding that really it's any of those kinds of natural environments will be good for us physiologically and also psychologically. So it's also great for our mental health, right? Like we were talking about, you just sort of calm down and feel better. So they've also, done all the science and looked at focus and memory and attention. So really good for people with ADHD, really useful for people dealing with PTSD, and also people who are looking to sort of get past writer's block, for example. So it's really good. Just being in the forest, they find actually boosts your creativity.
Inspiration.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're feeling like I'm stuck, right? I got like some kind of major presentation you need to do, take a walk in the forest. Come back, you probably have some fresh ideas, right? Yeah.
So was your first experience with Shinrin Yoku in Japan?
No, actually, my first experience was when I was training. I went into this kind of just feet first, not having actually experienced it ever before, having read about it a little bit. But when I went to Costa Rica for a 6-day immersion, that was when I first experienced forest bathing.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah. Since then, it was during the pandemic, actually, that several guides discovered or proposed that, you could actually do this remotely. You could do this over Zoom. So it was over that period of time when we were all kind of locked down and away from each other that we found we could actually do this online with the guide in his or her forest, the participants in whatever space they were in. And I saw a lot of people's living rooms and couches. And they had a potted plant maybe, or an open window, or, a seashell that they had found. I mean, just any kind of natural element. And then we would also remind our participants, you are nature. Even if you're locked down right now, nature is never like out there, you are nature. So what I was getting to is that at the point in time that I actually trained in 2018, the idea of virtual forest therapy walks had not occurred yet. So now, if a young person or anybody is interested in becoming a guide, before they actually go and invest and go for the full training, they can actually experience it, even if they don't have a guide in their city, which I did not. There was no other guide here in Hawaii. And I could talk to people over the phone about, what it was like and whether, ANFT, the association, was legitimate and the training was good and all that kind of stuff. But I could not experience it with anybody, either in person or virtually. But now you can at least do it virtually if there's not a guide in your city. So, yeah.
That is great.
It must have really impacted you, because what a leap of faith to say, I'm going to go into this training and I haven't even fully experienced it yet, but there was something that was drawing you to it. Because I have to say, Phyllis, I do think you found your calling. Having you as a guide through this experience, I think the way that you gently guide us, the way that you have us pause, I think that you have a real gift in doing this. So there was a reason that you're called to do this work. I truly believe that.
Yeah. And I don't know what made me trust it so much. Maybe just, I was definitely looking for what my post-retirement, life would be. I knew I wanted to do something that was going to kept me physically active. And I loved hiking, and taking walking vacations and things like that. But I also knew, there'll come a time when I won't be able to hike as hard. So a forest bathing walk is not a hike, right? As we said earlier, it's really gentle. We're not traveling very far at all, and there's no sort of goal that we need to get to. So I knew I wanted to stay physically active. I knew I wanted to stay socially engaged with people. I didn't want to just rot away at home and just sort of be by myself all day. Now I'm retired. It's like, okay, now I don't have to go to work. Now what else is there to do? And I knew I wanted to continue to do something that did some good in the world. Contributed. I discovered that forest therapy did all those things for me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what is a forest therapy guide?
So we like to say that the forest is the therapist.
Oh, I love that.
And the guide simply opens the doors. So I can tell you that a forest therapy guide is not a therapist. We are not necessarily botanists or naturalists. I don't have a background in that. But I think the guide is simply there to hold space, which is simply about witnessing every person's experience, and to offer these invitations, which we're trained to deliver in a particular language. And those invitations should be simple, and they should be open, and they should be sensory, and they should be infinite. So, in other words, I'm not going to say that white-rumped shama there is singing a particular song, and I would like you to find in that song your own sense of joy. I would never say that. But I would say, what do you hear right now?
Yeah.
And maybe you hear the white rum shama, maybe you hear a motorcycle down the road, but it's not, the idea is not to be prescriptive, but to actually let everybody kind of just like, again, using your senses, find your own, what it means to you. Right? And it can be all sorts of things. That white rump shama can remind you of your child. It can remind you of a bird that just died, that you're in your mourning. I mean, it can remind you, it can be freedom for you. It can be, everybody's going to have their own response to it. And we trust that the forest, being the therapist, because it's where we human beings originated, we have already a relationship to all of those elements. We have stories that are part of the way that our mind works. We have, physiological things that happen to us, like we were talking about those, like how the phytoncides work on us. But the main thing is because it's where we evolved, it's also where we are the most comfortable. So our bodies are actually not designed to be in traffic or in
Amen.
air,
That is
air-
true.
or air-conditioned cement four-walled rooms. That's actually, or even in ergonomic chairs. That's again, it's like not really where we evolved. So when we do go back to where it is that our species adapted, all of that sort of fight or flight response that is like set off not by the saber-toothed tiger anymore, but by that pinging and by that honking and by the edges of rooms and the shape of the lights, the blue light of a screen, all that kind of stuff. All of that is allowed to just sort of dissipate, and all of that sort of fight or flight kind of response is able to sort of relax. And in that more relaxed state, your own sort of natural health and healing psychologically and spiritually and physically can all just sort of come to bear. So it's, I think, why food tastes better after you go beach. Right?
That's so true.
Yeah, that is true.
It's like that barbecue tastes so good and you're so hungry, right? And it's like, it just tastes so good. It's like, yeah. And it's not that you did anything different to the recipe that you did from home. It's just that, something now is your senses are alive and you're able to really taste and relax and digest, So, yeah, the forest, again, has the metaphors in it, I think, that meet us wherever we are, right? And a lot of times I find when people are really going through emotional hard times, that's often when they find that something that the forest presents to them, if they're open to it, really gives them some, maybe not the final solution, not the big answers, but it cracks open something. Right? It just provides a new kind of perspective and a new way of thinking or looking at something that really kind of helps them, right? And people that are in grieving situations often find that just being out there in the forest just really taps something, and it's I don't even want to know what that thing is. Let's let it be a mystery, but it is something that the forest is able to do. And so my role is simply to be tuning in to those possibilities, tuning into what's happening to the participants, and maybe just finding a really open way of just suggesting, maybe if you just look in this way, or consider imaginatively if that was the case, what that would do. So that's something of what the Forest Therapy Guide does and is trained to do. We know our trails, we know wilderness first aid, so we're there also to keep you safe. I think the other thing is we're there to slow you down.
Yes, that's a big
one.
Because
I think we all got that.
That was, we appreciated
right?
that.
Right, because even after knowing what forest bathing is, you can go outside yourself and you can, ask yourself some sensory prompts, right? But you're going to be like, okay, got it. I know the answer.
I'm done. 30 seconds of reflection is good.
Yeah, done. Yeah, okay. Time to go back inside anyway. Right?
That's right.
But the forest therapy guy is going to be like, no,
that's right.
We're going to take 20 minutes. And you're not going to come back for another 20 minutes. And I'm going to walk to this point and we're going to walk together and we're not going to get there until 20 minutes from now, even though it's only a minute away. Right? So the forest therapy guide is like the brakes.
You keep us in.
I like
that.
I'm there to really hold you to that. Hold you to that. And also to set up the container where we are able to also meet each other, right? So again, when you're off by yourself or even with, your family or something, it may feel a little bit awkward to like, okay, let's stop and do a sharing circle right now. I mean, you may, I mean, depending on your relationships with the people you're traveling with. But on the forest therapy walk, right, there are not only these simple open sensory infinite invitations, but also afterwards, we stop, hopefully someplace in the shade where if you want to, sit, you can sit and do these little sharings of just simply what you're noticing. It doesn't have to be profound, and it doesn't even have to be articulated out loud if you don't want to. It's always up to you. But I find that act of witnessing each other and witnessing yourself in a space like this is really unique. Even if you're saying something as simple as, this smell of cut grass reminds me of my grandmother's house, right? It's not terribly like profound or like emotional or anything like that, although it brought up this memory that you didn't expect to have. But when do we ever get to talk like that to each other?
Right.
So tenderly, and so simply and so honestly. And I think it cuts through all kinds of barriers. We're talking about, that we're in this hyper-partisan kind of day, right? Just to share something as basic as that.
Look, she's making me tear up.
Yeah, but
The
I think
forest is still
forest
talking
does
to
it.
me.
Right.
It does. And we're able to just be human with each other. And I think when we're in a circle like that, I mean, that is so, again, primal.
Primal.
Right? I mean, all we need is a fire in the middle of that circle. But we do pass around that talking piece, which
Right.
maybe harkens to some other kind of older indigenous cultures. It's not like even now where we're kind of responding back and forth, like you're giving each other affirmations or like chuckling at each other. In those kinds of circles, I find that there's sometimes it's just like,
Right.
I don't need to say that was good or bad. I agree with you. I disagree with you. It was simply, I hear you. I see you. Right. And that is, oh God, that feels good. We don't get that enough in the world, where it is completely without judgment. It is completely without judgment, neither good nor bad. So I it's like sometimes people will cry, and I'm not going to go up and hug them and try to make them stop crying or say it's okay, you can cry. It's just like, you're crying.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Right? It
It
is.
is.
It's your journey.
It is. You are crying, and we are with you as you cry.
Right.
You don't necessarily make me feel like I'm crying. Maybe you do, but it's okay. All of that is okay. It's just totally okay.
I actually find it very related to, being Native Hawaiian. The practice that you do of the relational Shinrin Yoku is very much connecting definitely with the earth, right? And with our Aina, also connecting with ourselves, just being introspective and knowing that we are part of a larger system of relationships and connection and energies, but also what you do in your practice when you do allow that space for safe sharing. I think that really builds on Polina and the idea of connecting with others. And because even knowing Shareen and Amy for over 30 years, from our walk, I learned new things about them. And I think it was just the space was set up such that we could share even on a deeper level. And a lot of that comes from having a moment of peace, a moment of pause in order to quiet our minds and to really listen to what's bubbling up inside of ourselves. It was a very healing experience. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So, and I think the guide is also responsible for creating that sense of safety.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
mean,
I
not,
think
not
you did
just
an excellent job with
physical
that.
safety, but emotional safety, right? And we'll sometimes use that word that this is a healing practice, but also we're also a little shy of that word because it may not be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't want to set up that expectation.
Yeah.
Right.
That you will be healed because I don't know what the forest is going to be presenting to you at that point in time. I don't have a diagnosis and I don't have a therapy plan for you. It's been wonderful to just sort of get over that sense of I know it all. I have an agenda. I can direct you, which was very much my prior life. Right? My prior life was all about, I have a vision for this theatrical production, and I'm going to get everybody to that point. You know, even if it's just a matter of making the collaboration happen, but I'm primarily responsible for that end product. In this case, I have no idea what the end product is.
Yeah, you just opened the door. That's all right. You opened the door.
Open the door. How far you want to step in?
Right.
What is on the other side of the door? It's Alice in Wonderland time. I have no idea. I mean, and such incredible things have happened when I do the least in some ways. You know, when I was on Maui, we had set up these walks originally as part of Arbor Day at the Maui Nui Botanical Gardens. And in the planning process, the Lahaina fires happened. So we thought, can't just do a regular old walk now, right? There's something else in the air, obviously. So we kind of then tried to direct our efforts to people who were most directly affected by the wildfires. Either you're displaced or, you know, you were a first responder, or maybe you're volunteering on the Red Cross lines or whatever. You know, come and let this place just be restorative. That much I can promise, that you will be able to rest a little bit. I just wanted to do like the simple forest therapy. You know, it's like, here's what it's about. Just use your senses, go slow, notice. And people were in these sharing circles coming up with these incredible gushes of emotion. You know, some were about recognizing that if we were all standing together in the line at Costco, this guy said, we wouldn't be talking to each other. We're the same people. It's the same situation. We're all just in the same place at the same time, but there isn't that same sense of love for each other, you know, aloha for each other. And that's what was happening. I mean, so this man said, you know, this is so necessary. He was saying this feeling of knowing that we are community and knowing that we are there for each other. I mean, we're still complete strangers. We don't know, you know, we're not exchanging emails or anything afterwards, but yeah, there's a connection that just happened that just makes you feel like, yeah, I can go on and the world's okay, you know. And there was another woman who actually had lost everything basically in the fire except the clothes on her back. She's living in a hotel room now, right? And she said, I felt dead inside before I came on this walk. You know, everything had to just kind of numb down, right? To just deal with this catastrophe that had just happened to her. And she said, and this walk, just like opening my senses again, I just like began, it's like, you know, the sprouts that are coming up in the banyan tree in China, right?
Yes.
That's kind of what I pictured, right? It was just like, it had just been like gone underground and just blackened, burnt, ashen crust, right? Wow. But the forest bathing walk just began to, like, you know, water the soul a little bit, and the little sprouts began to have, just beginning, like, okay, I can maybe feel again. I can maybe see what I need to do next, or just have maybe some hope, or just or cry or whatever, but it's just like I'm no longer just feeling dead inside. I can feel alive again. And I think that in the final analysis, that's what the forest bathing walk can do. It'll remind you what it feels like to be alive.
Mm. Looking at everything that you've been able to do for so many people, and how they've received and experienced the forest, how has Shinrin Yoku impacted the mindset that you carry with you today?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is being less judgmental. Because before, I mean, again, my career was based on being critical. And I had to say, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, right? So relieved of that, it really has kind of made me a lot happier a person. I feel like I'm much more patient, much more accepting of people who are different than I am in every way, And I think people have told me that they notice that of me too, that that those things have relaxed in me a little bit. Does that answer the question that you?
Yeah, I think spending that time with you in the forest, and you do have that calm.
I'm only syncing myself with the forest, right? And that's why I get there early, right? That's why I need to sort of spend a little time there first. And just kind of like, okay, breathe myself, right? And get into the rhythm and the vibe, and what the forest has for me that day, right? And sometimes the forest is like really excitable. It's like woo, it's like everything's like really bright and sparkly and busy, and and a lot of energy, and sometimes it's really kind of a little melancholy and kind of misty and dreamy, so it's sort of like it varies, right? Yeah.
I was thinking what you were saying about the time thing. And I think in the first part of our walk, the 15 minutes felt really long. And towards the end I'm like, what? It's been
That was
15
15
minutes?
Right.
Right? It was like,
Right.
I was like, what? We're at
so
the
fast.
end? I'm like, has it, it just,
Isn't that amazing?
Yes. That was shocking to me.
Yeah, our relationship to time is another really profound thing that you can kind of be thinking a lot about. In fact, what someone once said is that the faster I go, the more I lose out.
Absolutely.
And the slower I go, the more I gain.
Right.
Right. So the faster you go in the FOMO kind of lifestyle, you're trying to get it all, but in fact, you're getting very little. And in fact, if you just would like slow down, you actually get a lot more.
Yeah.
I think what I appreciated about that practice of slowing down is that it allowed for gratitude as well. When you had told us, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes to go from point A to point B, which is typically would take you 1 minute to walk it, but we take 15 minutes. I was thinking, oh my God, 15 minutes. How are we going to do that? But I found myself just forcing myself to slow down. And I noticed so many things that just would have passed me by. Incredible things. I mean, even things like ants and, a piece of moss blowing in the wind, and just having this immense gratitude for how beautiful this earth is and how perfectly made it is. And I remember when you were summoning us after the 15 minutes, I wasn't even close to point B. And I was like, oh, I gotta get to point B. And I'm like, I can't believe that I spent 15 minutes and it went just like in a flash. And it was just that gift of pause that could tie into gratitude.
It just kind of segues right to what Aloha is. Like the forest, like we were all there, and the forest shared its Aloha with us. I think Erin and I talked about the ha. that we
Yes.
felt our spirit, right? Our mana was so full that we wanted to give some back to the forest. We felt like the forest had given us so much. So, Phyllis, what does aloha mean to you?
I think you nailed it right there. I think when I go back to the most embodied sense of that word, and I picture two people with their foreheads to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and their arms kind of lightly in an embrace, and the exchange of breath. But the fact that you've actually taken in somebody's essence, their most essential life force, their breath, and they've taken in yours, and you've inhaled them, you've accepted them thoroughly for who they are, and they've accepted you thoroughly, and you both acknowledged that there's been this exchange. I think that is the root of relationship. And relationship is the beginning of love. And relationship begins by simply contacting and noticing each other, So the aloha, that exchange of breath, again, that just helps me in so many ways understand what the greater meaning of aloha is, in that very tangible picture of the two humans with their foreheads together. It's like feeling and expressing that sense of complete acceptance and welcome, and the fact that we are meeting on the same plane, and that I appreciate you, and I mean just all of that, all of the stuff that goes into relationship. So I think it comes down to that word relationship, which is also big one for me because of the relational forest therapy, right? So I think that's my best struggle to define that word for me right now.
That's good.
There's like a sacredness.
It comes to that. It comes to that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're also creating that connection as well, right? You create that connection with others through that exchange of that breath, as you do with the forest as well. Like Amy said, you're exchanging what the forest gives you, and then you're returning that back.
Well, I mean, literally, the forest is doing that, right? Literally, it is taking our carbon dioxide and giving us oxygen.
Right.
I mean, literally, on the bottoms of leaves or flower petals are tiny mouths called stomata. So the leaf has these little openings that take in the gases and release water vapors. So it's stoma is the word for mouth. So the bottom of the leaf has all these tiny little mouths that are breathing us in, and we're breathing in what the forest gives to us. So we are literally in an aloha gesture.
Right.
So that forest bathing or nature therapy is the act of aloha with the natural world.
Yay.
I like that. I like that.
Mm.
Wow.
So Phyllis, how do you feel that you perpetuate aloha in the work that you do? I think you've been sharing a lot, but how do you specifically feel that you perpetuate aloha?
Well, simply by offering these walks and these opportunities for people to come back into relationship with the natural world, by hosting these sharing circles, where people can connect with each other. Again, like we were saying, it's where we can all just be reminded that we're all human, and in these fractious times, I think that's more important than ever before.
I agree. I think it's like you provide space for that sacred exchange with each other. So
yeah. I like that one of my friends, forest therapy guide, says, we're actually, I mean, you wouldn't think of forest therapy guiding this way, but it's a kind of quiet activism.
Explain that.
It's actually it doesn't look like you're out there marching, or protesting or holding up big signs, but you're moving towards something.
Yeah. Really. one person at a time in their realization
One
of what's
person at a time.
of what's important, right?
Yeah, yeah, and only if they want to,
Yeah.
and only to the degree that they're ready.
Right.
You know, so I mean, I mean, that's what I also love about the forest there. I mean, it's so completely self-directed. You know, usually by the end of it, everybody's a little changed, nevertheless.
Right,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Sure.
You know, you shared some stories about your recent journey to Maui.
Mm.
Could you share with us another story or an experience of how you've witnessed Aloha in action through your practice of Shinrin Yoku and your forest bathing activities?
I remember from relatively early on in my practice, there were two couples that came on this walk. One was a local boyfriend girlfriend. The other one was a honeymooning pair from Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
I know.
That's great.
And afterwards, they said, and I watched this, and it was like, "Hey, you guys want to go out to lunch?" And they had never met each other before, and the other couple said, "Yeah, let's hang out a little more together." And they are not the only ones who afterwards I see form these bonds where they want to actually spend even more time with each other. Yeah, there often is like a, you know, like sometimes a visitor caught an Uber up, you know, or a taxi or something, and the person who has the car will say, "Oh, let me drive you back to Waikiki," or you know, let me get you home, you know, and these acts of kindness and generosity after the walk, I think, are the wonderful sort of aloha after effect. You know, where you actually see the aloha now in action, right? Where they actually will perpetuate it. They're perpetuating it, right, by doing something good. So yeah, we always like to invite people to, yeah, whatever the forest gave you now, you know, give back in however you want to. You know, whether it's just telling your kid about what you did in the forest that day, or just opening the door for somebody, you know,
Right.
at the market, you know. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, just keep paying it forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I have to say that I didn't know what to I didn't know what to expect. I mean, Erin has talked about her forest bathing experience, and I, never been to Lion Arboretum, but the experience was amazing for me. Like Shareen was saying about that it forces you to slow, and it opens your ears and your eyes and your smelling senses and our tasting senses when we were tasting the beating bean. Yeah, and I mean it's just such an awakening that I was, even it was not strenuous. It was calm and wonderful, and I was exhausted when we got home. Like, I actually took a power nap because I just felt like now it's time to rest. I just felt so relaxed. And
great.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, that was really cool. And then Camden and I were giggling about bringing our loofahs and, we gotta bring our scrubbies because we're going forest bathing. But I was like, wow, and we're the ones that were crying the most, and like it was very cleansing from the inside out.
It's very cleansing. That's a good way of putting it.
Yes. So yeah, and then you do want to perpetuate that. You want to, pay that forward. That appreciation.
Great.
What was your experience like, Shareen?
Yeah. So I was, it was so funny because I said I was really tired after the forest bathing walk because I'm used to going, 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 and we had to slow down. And it was kind of, I was like trying to hold myself back and try to go slow. And I think from that perspective of me trying to hold myself back made me tired. So instead of the normal moving, I was like, okay, I have to be very thoughtful in what I'm doing. So taking the slow steps and stopping to observe and really just taking everything in and processing it. I loved it. It was a beautiful walk and I learned so much about myself, about my friends, but just being in nature out there, it was nice to be and to feel the sun and to feel the wind, to hear the birds, just everything that surrounded us on that day. It was a wonderful experience and would love to, of course, have more people experience it for themselves because they have to. They're just like, you have to try it. It was just so amazing. And people are like, okay.
That's true. I mean, it's funny because, like you were saying, Phyllis, it's hard to explain what the experience is. I'll say, "Wow, look at the ants," and look at or look at the tree and the leaves blowing, and it just doesn't come across verbally the way it would if someone was actually there and experiencing it. And one of the ways that it impacted me is I liken it to when you see ho'ailona, right? When you see like the different signs when you feel the breeze, when you take the pause and you connect with your ancestors, you connect with the aina, you connect with the spaces, you connect with the people that are with you. And, we could say something or we would be, in quiet thoughtfulness or mindfulness and a bird would come by or the tree leaves would move or the sun would glisten in a certain way, so it was all those little signs from nature that were welcoming us. And I think you even said that, Phyllis, when we first started. Look for those ways in which the forest is welcoming us to their space. And there were signs everywhere. And then we would see other people walking through the forest and the path area, and they're just walking. And that's how I normally would do. I'd walk, I'd look at the signs, look at what species of plant this is, and I'd keep walking, go, oh, what a pretty tree. Oh, there's some birds, and I keep walking. But there's something very powerful in being mindful of where you're at and just being quieting everything about yourself. And the forest speaks loudly when you're quiet. And that was what was very impactful for me.
I love that. Yes, I think that's quite true. Yeah. And I think sometimes, when we're used to a certain mode, and when we have to change modes, that is new for our bodies and our minds. And so therefore, like any new thing, when we're trying to learn a new way of being, it's challenging, right? It's like, oh, I can't just my muscles can't just sort of do the same old, right? So I'm hoping that when you go back to your regular life, you will see that there's been a difference, Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually feel very much like just taking a nap afterwards too. I just get so relaxed, and you go into this kind of dream state, like we were reading in that last poem,
Right.
Yeah.
So Phyllis, what motivates you to keep doing this kind of work?
You guys.
Aww.
And the state of the world right now, I would say, it's the same thing that motivated me to get into it that motivates me to stay in it, right? And in fact, it's probably even worse than it was in 2018. So climate change, climate crises, people not being nice to each other.
Yeah.
And nice to themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a big one too.
Right. Because if you
that's where it begins.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
If you're not nice to each other because you're not nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Vicious circle. Yeah.
So tied into that, what wisdom can you share with us about perpetuating aloha.
You know how I usually love to end with a poem in my forest therapy walks, and I'm going to do the same thing again. This is another poem by my favorite naturalist poet, Mary Oliver. This is like a really short little one, but I kind of like this, and we can dissect it later, but I'll just read it out. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. So,
Wow.
instructions for perpetuating aloha. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. It really kind of comes down to just noticing each other, right? And giving yourself the permission to be full of wonder and appreciation, and allowing for the miraculous and the marvelous. And then don't let it stop there. Tell. Keep going.
Right.
So I think that's the wisdom of people that are a lot wiser than I am, who have a better way with words. So that was Mary Oliver, Instructions for Living a Life, or Perpetuating Aloha.
Love it.
Beautiful.
I like that. Be astonished. I like that because aloha in practice is amazing. And it should be like, oh, wow. We should be astonished.
And when you really exchange with that other breath and that other being, whether human or more than human, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So if you can be astonished by connecting with another soul and saying, "You're astonishing, you other soul." Wow.
Right.
How cool would that be? How cool would our world be?
It's such a simple phrase, like just those two words, be astonished, but it's the result of actually seeing someone or something and having gratitude for that thing. That's what astonishment is to me, you know.
Not expecting, like that they overperformed. What they were greater than your expectations were. Right, that's the astonishment. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
There's the surprise aspect, right? The fact that you were open to being surprised. So it means that you were having to be quite that open, and then the other person, then you allowed that other person to be, or other being, the forest, whatever, to be astonishing.
Right. Yeah. But I feel like anything, any being, any place, any person, right, that has spirit, right, that has has the potential to be astonishing.
To astonish you.
Yes. If we stop to pay attention.
And notice.
And notice.
And be open to that. Yeah. Because you can also just be cynical, right? You can notice, and then you can just be,
right.
Of course, or they actually are below my expectations, right? Or they're not that great, right? That kind of thing. But if you actually go in with that, with the other lesson of be astonished,
I think in our experience, we were astonished by what we felt, what we internally, externally, what we felt, what we saw, what we learned. And then we now want to take it and tell people about it. We want people to experience what we've experienced.
You are doing that right now with this podcast. You are actually doing a step number 3. You are telling about it.
So how can others learn more about forest bathing and the work that you do?
So I have a website, and it's forestbathinghi.com. And everything that you ever need to know in terms of how to contact me or sign up for a walk, or what the walks will be like, or where I'm guiding, if you just have a question for me, that's a way to get through to me.
Wonderful.
forestbathinghi.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Phyllis,
Yeah.
is there anything else, any parting words that you would like to share with our listeners?
I just want to say to all of your listeners, aloha. And please keep listening to this wonderful podcast and to these three beautiful ladies and their infectious joie de vivre.
Big words.
Big word.
And take a pause right here to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share about forest bathing, and for coming on that walk, and for carrying all the good things that you're doing in the world right now.
Oh,
Well, we love you,
you.
Phyllis. We're so thankful to know you. We're so thankful that you've been our guide in this, and your kind and loving spirit, it really just made the walk what it was. You just set the perfect stage for us to really reflect and to connect with, again, with the Aina, within ourselves, and then with each other. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything.
Yes, thank you for sharing your gifts of aloha with our community. You remind us of the importance of connecting to our Aina. It is life-giving and heals us when we need it the most. Thank you so much, mahalo, for your time and for being a living example of what it means to be inspired by aloha. Mahalo, Phyllis.
We love you, Phyllis.
Yeah, we love you.